Hey there, HSM family. Another installment of our study of the Beatitudes. And so, whether you've been following with us the entire time or this is your first time checking in with us, we are in Matthew chapter 5, where Jesus is beginning the Sermon on the Mount. He's teaching a group of people. He's on a hillside. There's a whole mess of people all coming together. And he is walking through these teachings with the word blessed at the beginning of each one. And really, what he's unfolding for us is what it looks to be blessed according to God's kingdom lens. And what we've been calling this series is the upside down teachings of Jesus, because a lot of times when you look at what he teaches, it's very, very different than what our world would teach us. And so we're going to be in Matthew 5, verse 8 today. And it says this: Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And so when you see that statement, I think that first we need to understand something about the word heart. So the heart is kind of that thing that we need to survive. It's the central point of our body, really. It is the thing that shuffles blood to and fro all throughout us. But it's important for us to understand that this would include our minds, it would include our will, it would include our emotions. So blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Now we know that throughout the Bible, the heart is something that oftentimes is defined in one of two ways. Like this beatitude, it defines it as pure, and then elsewhere in the Bible, it defines the heart as wicked. No one can understand it. No one can control it. No one can fathom it. And the thing is you have two hearts. We each have two realities in this life. One of those realities is a heart left unsubmitted to the things of God, or operating outside of his will and not looking through his lens, right? That would be one that is wicked. And then you have what Jesus teaches in this, the heart that is pure. And the only way, first off, the only way that we're ever going to possess a pure heart, a pure mind, a pure will, pure emotion, is if we have a heart that is surrendered to the things of God. When I think about the phrase pure heart, the only human, outside of Jesus of course, the only human that comes to mind when I think of someone who possesses a pure heart is a newborn child. A really young child has this kind of pure essence about their being, because they are so utterly helpless. When I remember bringing my boys home from the hospital, and both of them had extended stays in the hospital because they had this thing called jaundice, and so they had to have these special lights. But Canon, we actually got this cool blanket delivered to our house that was this jaundice blanket, and it glowed like this purple glow. And when we first plugged it in and plugged my little son in around it, and he had these little goggles that he had to wear, and he's this little wiggly newborn thing, and we put him in there, he looked like a little glowing alien child. It was so weird, but he sat there with his little arms all tucked into his swaddle, and he was completely helpless. There was nothing that he was going to do that was going to get him out of the little bassinet with the weird purple light thingy. It's just, that was his reality, and he was stuck in it. There was nothing that he can do. There was nothing that he was going to say, because he didn't even know a word, that was going to be unpure. There was no motivation in his mind that was unpure. The only motivations that a newborn child has are food and sleep and clean pants, right? They don't really know anything besides those things. And when they lack those things, what do? They cry. They cry for their needs to be met. And sometimes they cry a lot. And sometimes they cry really loud. And sometimes mom and dad are even in the process of trying to meet those needs, but they don't perceive it in that way, and they continue to cry and cry and cry until their needs are met. Why? Because they're completely helpless and they recognize themselves as such. They can't meet their own needs. And so they're calling out, they're crying out for somebody else to meet that need for them. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. I want to flip over to the book of John. So if you have your Bible handy, go ahead and flip to John chapter 5. And we're going to be in a story where Jesus kind of stumbles onto a scene. There's this pool that's in Jerusalem where people used to walk, members of the community with various disabilities, out to this pool. And this pool was believed to have some sort of healing property. As the pool is stirred by somebody, if one of these people that happened to be placed by the pool were lucky enough to get into the pool, then they believed that oftentimes there would be some sort of healing that would take place. And so Jesus is walking by this pool. And it says in verse 5, it says, one who was there had been invalid for 38 years. That's a really long time. That's more years than I am alive, right? I'm 35. This guy has been in this current situation for 38 years. He has been completely dependent on other people to walk him to this pool, or maybe he's sought other types of healing. He's gone to great lengths to better his condition, and now he is resorting to sitting by this pool while someone's going to come and stir it in hopes that he can somehow call out to a stranger or maybe somebody else that's there to be placed in it to hopefully receive some sort of relief from his current situation. That's this guy, right? And Jesus stumbles upon this guy who has been in this situation for 38 long years. It says, when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" That seems like a pretty obvious question. Jesus recognizes that this guy is in a state of helplessness. This guy is in a state of hopelessness. This guy has come to the end of himself and recognizes that there is nothing within his power, nothing within his ability, nothing within his person that is going to make his situation any better. And so he's leaning on anything that he can in this moment, right? Jesus says, "Do you want to get well?" Notice he says, he doesn't say, "Do you want to get better?" Jesus isn't into half healing. He isn't into temporary crutches. He isn't into some sort of hope for a season. He says, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." See, this man's focused on the pool. Jesus is there. He asks him a question, "Do you want to get well?" This guy, he's so upside down and backwards. He's thinking that this random stranger is talking about, "Do you want to get in the pool?" And Jesus is not interested in the pool. Jesus asks him a question, "Do you want to get well?" This man is looking to the world to heal him, while the one who created the world is standing right in front of him, asking him an honest question. But in his response, Jesus sees this glimpse of the purity, the desire in this man's heart to be healed, to be well. He also sees that he is defeated. He also sees that this isn't the first day or the second day or the third day that this guy has come to this very same pool only to be cheated out by someone else who jumps into the pool in front of him. And he's at the end of his rope. He's hoping that this might be the day. All of a sudden in verse 8 it says, Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." Jesus came back to this guy who says, "Man, there's always somebody jumping in the pool in front of me." Jesus says, "Get up," with an exclamation point. Stop clinging to this false hope, this empty promise of this pool that's somehow going to make you well. Get up. I will make you well. Pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and he walked. Now, I want you guys to recognize that this guy didn't have any sort of faith in Jesus. Jesus just recognizes that this guy is utterly helpless. And this guy is knowledgeable of the fact that he is utterly helpless. And Jesus recognizes the brokenness in this man and the fact that this man recognizes his own broken state. And although this man knows nothing about Jesus, hasn't heard any of the teachings of Jesus, Jesus reaches down to him in the pure state of neediness that this guy is in and plucks him out of his state. He says, I will bless you by making you well. No doubt as this guy leaves from this place, he is completely blessed by Jesus, wondering who this guy is that's able to allow him to pick up his mat and walk. 38 years. And all of a sudden this guy says, pick up your mat, and boom, he can do it. This guy's going to have some questions. This guy's going to dig deeper. He's not going to walk away the same person. He's going to walk away wanting to know more, wanting to dive deeper into who this Jesus is. And no doubt he sees a power through Jesus that he's never seen before. And he's filled with a power by Jesus that he's never experienced before. He's blessed. He's seen God because he was approached by God and did not hide his brokenness from God, but had it on full display in front of him. I want to see the response from the Pharisees real quick before we move to something else and wrap this little teaching up. Look at this. At once, this is verse 9 again, at once the man was cured, picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. And so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." Verse 11, but he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" Look at how blind the Pharisees are. In the same way that this guy has a pure request to be healed, even though it was fixated and focused in the wrong way that this healing was going to come, the Pharisees see this guy walking, the same guy that they'd seen for 38 years placed at this pool, hoping to be healed. They see him with the mat curled up walking down the street, and instead of being completely enamored with the fact that this guy's now able to walk, recognizing it as a miracle from only God above, they go, "Hey, it's a Sabbath. You're not allowed to walk with a mat," which was never one of the original Mosaic laws. But somewhere along the lines, a mat became carrying a load, and so you couldn't even carry a mat on the Sabbath day. And instead of being completely immersed with this miracle that they are now witnessing, they go, "Hey, shame on you. Don't carry your mat on the Sabbath." And this guy goes, "Look, man, the guy who made me well said, 'Pick up your mat and walk.' I'm going to pick up my mat and walk." Look, I'm going to flip over to Psalm. There's this passage in the book of Psalms, 4, and we're going to be in verse 7. It says this. Actually, let's go to verse 6. It says, "Many are asking, 'Who can show us any good?' Let the light of your face shine upon us, O Lord. You have filled my heart with greater joy than when their grain and new wine abound. I will lie down and sleep in peace, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety." Look, the Lord alone is the one that gives us that pure heart. Let us continue to focus our minds, focus our hearts, focus our wills, focus our emotion on Him. Let us continue to cling to Him, abide in Him, and grow in Him, and reflect His image to the world around us. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And as we just celebrated Easter, it's only because of the work done on the cross and defeating the grave that we are able to utter the sentence, pure in heart, because it's His purity, His righteousness that has been lavished upon us. So let's celebrate that today as we live for Him. See you guys next time.